Hello everyone. So the first topic is organization of the glomerulus. Okay, so firstly this is the afferent arteriole which is coming and it is breaking down into capillary. It forms the bunch of capillary known as glomerulus, and then it will go out forming the efferent arteriole. Okay, so imagine this is a cross section through. So this will be a full like it is like a balloon. Okay, and this is like a fist in the balloon. So this balloon is called as the Bowman's capsule, and the fist in the balloon is the capillary or the glomerular capillary. Okay, so this the Bowman's capsule, the layer of the Bowman capsule in contact with the glomerulus is called visceral epithelium or the visceral cell layer, and which is not in the contact with the Bowman's capsule, this blue color, dark blue color, this is known as parietal cell layer, which is squamous epithelial cells. Okay, so this the boundary between the glomerulus or the glomerular part which is in contact with the Bowman's capsule or in the contact with this visceral layer, this is called as glomerular membrane. Okay, so this glomerular membrane has distinctly three layers. First will be layer first will be the endothelium of the capillaries, and then it will be the basement membrane between the capillary and the Bowman capsule, and then it will be and then this Bowman's capsule, the visceral layer, sends out few foot process, and this foot process is known as podocyte, and there are various gaps between this podocyte which are known as filtration slit. So now let's discuss it in this diagram. So this is a capillary, this is the endothelium of the capillary. Gap between the endothelium is known as fenestration. Then we have the basement membrane, and this is the foot process of the podocytes of the glomerular capsule. What does this mean? The visceral layer of the glomerulus has some cells called podocyte which will give out some foot process, and the gap between them is known as filtration slit. Now basement membrane has three parts. Closer to the capillary it is lamina rara interna, in the middle it is lamina densa, and close to the podocyte it is called lamina rara externa. Okay, so next topic is the cells of the different parts of the nephron. First of all, let's see this PCT. Okay, so this PCT has brush bordered epithelium, and then inside it it has nucleus and various mitochondria, and on the surface there are various microvilli, and between each cell there is lateral intercellular spaces. Now this proximal convoluted tubule is divided into two parts. First is the pars convoluta, which is the convoluted portion of PCT. Another is the pars recta, which is the straight portion of the PCT. Then we have thin descending loop of Henle, which has flat cells. Then we have thick ascending loop of Henle, which has low cuboidal epithelium and mitochondria is high here. Then we have distal convoluted tubule. Here it is low cuboidal epithelium with very much brush bordered epithelium. Then we have collecting tubule, which has same structure as DCT, and then some cells in the DCT which are close to afferent and efferent arteriole become columnar and are called macula densa cells. Then in the collecting duct tubule we have cuboidal epithelium. There are two types of cells in the collecting tubule. One is the P cell or the principal cell, another is the I cell or the intercalated cell. So P cells are the ones which respond to hormone ADH and aldosterone. Their main function is to secrete potassium, and I or intercalated cells, their function is to secrete H plus ions or the protons. Then after the collecting tubule we have papillary duct, and this papillary duct has columnar epithelium. So in this what we need to remember is that this PCT has two portions, pars convoluta and pars recta, brush bordered epithelium with lateral intercellular spaces. Some cells of DCT close to arterioles become columnar and are known as macula densa cells. Then this collecting tubule has two types of cells, P cells and I cells. P cells respond to ADH and aldosterone and are helpful in conservation of water. And I cells secrete H plus and helps in acid-base balance. And in P cells, as they help in conservation of water, some aquaporin will be present. So which aquaporin is present? Aquaporin 2. Then we have papillary duct, which is formed up of columnar epithelium. So regarding the epithelium, this was cuboidal, flat, low cuboidal, cuboidal and columnar. Now let's see type of the nephrons. There are two types of nephrons, cortical nephrons and the juxtamedullary nephron. First of all, let's see cortical nephron. They are 85% of the total nephron. Their glomeruli is smaller. They have short loop of Henle, and loop of Henle is only till the outer layer of the renal medulla. Okay, so there is a thin segment in the descending limb and a thick segment in the ascending limb. And there are peritubular capillary plexus. So what is this? So there is a capillary plexus all over the nephron. If it is in the cortex, it will be called peritubular capillary. If it is in the medulla, it will be called vesa recta, as in the case of juxtamedullary nephron, which extend till the medulla as they have long loop of Henle. Okay, so in the cortical nephron, the rate of filtration is slow, and in the cortical nephron, their main role is secretion of waste product. Whereas juxtamedullary are less in number, their glomeruli is larger, they have longer loop of Henle, and both descending and ascending limb has thin segments. Okay, and the rate of filtration is fast, and their main function is countercurrent system by which the kidneys concentrate urine. Now let's see juxtaglomerular apparatus. So what's this? This is the Bowman's capsule. This is the afferent arteriole. This is the glomerular capillaries. This is the efferent arteriole. As we discussed earlier, some cell of the efferent arteriole, some cells of the DCT, this is the DCT, distal convoluted tubule. We are seeing the cross section, so this is the DCT. So some cells of the DCT in the contact with the arteriole become columnar and are known as macula densa cells. These are chemoreceptors. Okay, and some cells of afferent arteriole become differentiated to form juxtaglomerular cell, and in between two there are supporting cells called mesangial or Lacy cell. This juxtaglomerular cell are baroreceptor and they release renin. Okay, so these juxtaglomerular cell are baroreceptor and they are innervated by the sympathetic nerve fiber. So we need to remember that if sympathetic innervation is given, they will release renin. Okay, so these juxtaglomerular cells are stimulated by hypovolemia or decreased renal perfusion pressure. The next cell we saw were macula densa cell. Okay, so what is the function of macula densa cell? They function as chemoreceptor and they are stimulated by a decrease in sodium ions or sodium chloride load. So therefore whenever there will be decrease in sodium, it will cause increased renal release. These cells are not innervated by any innervation, sympathetic or parasympathetic, and they are not well adapted for reabsorption, and they do not show any signs of secretory activity. So next we have mesangial cells or the Lacy cell. They are the supporting cells of the juxtaglomerular apparatus as we saw earlier. So next they are contractile, and what happens that glomerular filtration rate. We will discuss this afterward, but this GFR is directly proportional to the surface area, and these Lacy cell control the surface area. So whenever this Lacy cell will contract, it will decrease the surface area. Okay, so whenever they will contract, they will decrease the surface area and therefore they will decrease the GFR. Opposite will happen whenever they will relax. And then they also show granulation to secrete renin in conditions of extreme hyperactivity. So normally renin is only secreted by GG cells. So they also secrete various substances and take up various immune complex and this whole system, this whole juxtaglomerular apparatus regulate the renin secretion into the bloodstream, and the plasma renin level is 200 nanogram per deciliter. Now let's see regulation of renin secretion. First of all, we will see the stimulation. How to remember this? Start with the number of cells we did. First of all, we discussed about juxtaglomerular cell. So we know its two properties. First of all, that it is baroreceptor. It is stimulated when there is decrease in the pressure. And the second one, that it is innervated by the sympathetic nerves. Okay, so how they will be stimulated? First of all, by increasing the sympathetic activity, which is due to hypovolemia or hypotension, as we know, this we discussed earlier. Then there are beta-1 adrenergic receptor, which are sympathetic in nature. So if increase in the circulating catecholamines will be there, they will act to the beta-1 adrenergic receptor and stimulate them. Then prostaglandins also stimulate the cells. Another cell which we did was macula densa cell. So how is macula densa cell stimulated? When there is less sodium, and we know diuretics decrease the sodium level. And another cause is congestive heart failure. It will stimulate renin secretion. Opposite of this will lead to inhibition of renin secretion, like first of all, we have to inhibit the JG cells. JG cells will be inhibited by the stretch, okay, when the pressure will increase. So how will the pressure increase? Pressure can increase by stretch. Pressure can be increased by angiotensin 2 and ADH. See, diuretics were stimulating and antidiuretic hormone will inhibit. And then ANP will also inhibit, and the sodium level, if increased, will also inhibit the renin secretion. Now let's see renin-angiotensin system, also called RAS system. If expanded more, it is known as renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. So what we need to remember here is angiotensinogen is converted to angiotensin 1 by renin. Then it is converted to angiotensin 2 by angiotensinotensin converting enzyme present in lung, kidney and plasma. We have to remember only till this, because if it is converted to angiotensin 3, it gets rapidly destroyed. Now let's see actions of angiotensin 2. It is the most potent pressor, and it causes generalized arteriolar constriction, so it increases both systolic and diastolic blood pressure. Okay, so then it will stimulate zona glomerulosa to increase aldosterone. That's why the system is called renin-aldosterone system. Okay, and this aldosterone, the function is increase sodium reabsorption. Then it will also facilitate the release of norepinephrine. Then it will lead to contraction of the mesangial cell, and as discussed earlier, this will decrease the GFR. Then it will increase the sodium reabsorption, and then it will also increase the water intake by acting on the circumventricular organ. And by increasing the water intake, it will increase the blood pressure and ADH and ACTH secretion. So how do we remember the actions of angiotensin 2? First of all, it is pressor. Then it will increase the secretion of aldosterone, then increase the secretion of norepinephrine, contract mesangial cell, increase sodium reabsorption and increase the water intake. The fact which we need to remember in the renal secretion, renal circulation, is that the blood flow and VO2 within the kidneys is not homogeneous. So as we know, kidney can be differentiated into two parts, the outer cortex and the inner medulla. So the VO2 is more in the cortical blood, okay, and the blood flow of the cortical blood is also greater than that of the medulla. So why is it so? So high cortical blood flow is due to the fact that it contains the major component of the nephron. So as we know, only in the cortical nephrons the loop of Henle extends in the medulla. Otherwise, all of the nephron is located in the cortex. So there is high cortical blood flow. Another reason is that there is low blood flow in inner medulla because the blood there has low velocity. Okay, so we know in the medulla the capillaries are vasa recta, and in the cortex they are peritubular capillaries. So in the vasa recta the blood velocity is very low. So why it is low? Length of the vasa recta is 40 millimeter, which is 40 times length of an ideal capillary. So increase in length will increase the resistance. The another reason is that there is a hairpin bend in the medulla. Okay, so this hairpin bend will increase the interstitium osmotic pressure, which will cause dehydration of blood. So the viscosity of the blood near the hairpin bend will increase. Another reason is that there is hyperosmolarity in the inner medulla, and therefore there is very low hydrostatic pressure. This also slows down the medullary flow. Okay, so another peculiar feature of the renal circulation is auto-regulation of RBF and GFR. So what does this mean? First, there are two mechanisms. Okay, the first mechanism is based on the myogenic theory of auto-regulation. What does this mean? It means that every smooth muscle have a basal myogenic tone. Means at rest every smooth muscle has some level of contractility. So if the blood flow increases, the pressure will also adjust itself so that it doesn't increases. So this is known as auto-regulation. Okay, so it means that in kidneys there is an increase in the resistance which parallels the increase in the pressure, and the blood flow is unchanged. Means if the pressure increases, there will be increase in resistance, and thus the blood flow will remain constant. So this is due to the myogenic theory, which states that every smooth muscle has a basal myogenic tone. So let's understand this with the graph. So see, if the pressure changes from 80 to 200 millimeter of mercury, within this range renal blood flow remains constant, and so does the GFR. So this is due to the basal myogenic tone of smooth muscles in the kidney. The second mechanism is tubulo-glomerular feedback. So what does this mean? Okay, so let's assume that there is increase in the afferent arteriolar pressure. So if the afferent arteriolar pressure increase, glomerular capillary pressure will increase, and therefore the GFR will increase. If the GFR increases, the sodium reabsorption in PCT will increase, and if it will increase, there will be much more fluid delivery to the loop of the Henle. And if fluid delivery increases, there will be more sodium and chloride entry in the macula densa cell. And this increased sodium will increase the sodium potassium ATPase activity, which will lead to ATP hydrolysis, as the name suggests, ATPase. And due to breakdown of ATP, more adenosine will be formed, and this adenosine via the adenosine A1 receptor will increase the calcium release, and this calcium will go in the smooth muscle of the afferent arteriole, and calcium will cause its constriction. Due to this constriction, it will inhibit the increase in the afferent arteriolar pressure, and thus the GFR will decrease. Okay, so in short, what does this mean? That whenever GFR will increases, sodium entry into macula densa cells will increase, which will by various steps increase the calcium release, which will contract the afferent arteriole. And if the afferent arteriole will contract, there will be less fluid entering entering in the glomerulus, so therefore the GFR will decrease.